Right, so we've got Le Chien Rouge from the Pays d'Oc in the south of France.
That's
First
right.
one.
Pays d'Oc is the named region on the bottle, but actually we know that it's actually from the Roussillon, which is a smaller region within the Pays d'Oc. So Pays d'Oc is a wide net of an area around the south of France, which includes everything right down to the Spanish border, and sort of almost all the way around to the Provence region, the Riviera of France. But we know this winemaker, we know that it's actually from the Roussillon, a much smaller area. We're talking that rugged, mountainous area that if you've ever driven from France to Spain, just before you pass over the border, you've got to go up through these lovely mountains. This is the spot we're talking.
And I didn't mention a single grape here because this is a field blend.
For sure, it is a field blend. I say field blend with these wines, but there are no fields here. In the Roussillon, we're talking bush vines, so they're not the planted vines that you see like against a trellis or with a wire going in nice straight rows. We're talking bushes clinging to a rock here and to the side of a hill there. They've been around for a very, very long time, but it's a field blend absolutely in the sense that they just pick whatever's growing well and they throw it in. We can probably guess, we're in the Roussillon, it's red wine, there's going to be Carignan in there for sure, there's going to be Caladac in there for sure, there's most likely going to be Grenache Noir, but I imagine this is mostly Carignan. In fact, we can taste it's mostly Carignan because Carignan particularly has this really strong blackcurrant Ribena flavour, which is coming through really nicely in here.
And look, this is, I say, field blend, that kind of single variety in a bottle. So a bottle that says Sauvignon Blanc, Carignan, that's like real modern winemaking. This is like how it's been done for forever, really, isn't it?
Yeah. We're talking about farmers here that probably were farming sheep, cattle, and whatever, and then grapes on the side, and they were very much left to do their own thing. And what you've got is a variety of different grapes, some of which do better in warmer springs, some of which do better in damper autumns, and obviously weather is changeable, especially when you're down in that part of France where you've got a coast each side, the Mediterranean, the Atlantic. Weather can be changeable. Different years, different grapes are going to do better. But you've got consistency in that no matter what the weather's like, there are going to be some grapes that do better than others, and you can pop those in the bottle. And that's the way it's always historically been, and ultimately generally delivers better value, because if you're just growing Sauvignon Blanc, or if you're just growing Pinot Noir, and let's take Pinot Noir for example, then you have a really, really, really hot summer, and the Pinot Noir gets absolutely destroyed by the heat, game's up. You've got nothing. Whereas these guys have always got something to play with.
Yeah. I mean, like say, they're growing things just in the field, the mixed grapes. Generally, they'll have been making that for them drinking at home and just sell it locally. So food, this is table wine, isn't it? This is the kind of stuff gets plonked down in the middle at a wedding and everyone enjoys it. Doesn't really matter what you're eating as such. But yeah, I mean, what would this kind of favour?
So one of the things, we're going to get technical here. We're going to use a technical term.
Here we go.
One of the things
that
are most associated with Roussillon and red wines from this region is a flavour called garrigue. The French call it garrigue, and it basically means flavour of the bush, of the shrubbery around that area. And what that is rosemary, thyme, lavender. These are other bushes that will be growing around the grapes in that area. So these wines are super, super fruity, dark fruit flavours, but there is that herby, lavender, rosemary, thyme flavour in there. So anything you're cooking that's got those sort of strong herby, rich, strong herby flavours are going to be perfect.
Yeah, right? I mean, I just went down the wrong. I was trying so hard to not cough then, but no, I mean, to be fair, right, jargon aside, I do get that kind of like herbiness to it. So yeah, anything you're whacking a sprig into it. Anything that comes in a sprig form,
it's going to like it.
Sprigs at the ready.
Cheers.
Here we have the Umbrelle Pinot Noir, and this is from the Ville Timișoara region of Romania.
That's
This is Umbrelle, a Cremel Răcas wine. Massive fans of Umbrelle and Cremel Răcas here at Smash Grapes. One of our really well-selling reds, actually. This.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Anything we get from Cremel Răcas seems to do fantastically. Pinot Noir, so yeah, as Dan says, they do the international grape varieties. They do Pinot Noir, they do Sauvignon, they do Merlot, they do Chardonnay. They also do their native grape varieties, so less known Romanian grapes. Pinot Noir, it's one of my favourites from them. Oh, it is good. So Pinot Noir is a very, very light, thin-skinned red grape. Nearly stumbled on that one. It's probably the lightest of all the red grapes. So if you're not a massive red wine fan, if you find red wines maybe too tannic, too sort of astringent, too overpowering, Pinot Noir is a really nice place to start. It's the most easy going of the red grapes.
And when Sam's going on about tannic or astringent, I feel like, what does that mean? If you couldn't handle a black coffee, but you love a nice milky, frothy coffee, you know, you like that flavour, but you just want it a bit dulled down, that's what tannin is. So the bigger red wines, they make your mouth feel really dry, and they're what people think are like bitter and harsh. Pinot Noir is gateway, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gateway. It's entry level for sure. And that all comes from skin. So the tannin in red wine comes from the skin. Thicker the skin on the red wine, the better suited it is for hot environments, but it will get more of those bitter tannins. Pinot Noir, super thin-skinned. Now that means it's a bit sensitive to the sun. You've got to be careful with Pinot Noir. It has to grow in cool environments. So in Romania, in Villa Timășuli, we're in the top left corner of Romania, far away from the coast. So it's very, very landlocked. The weather is quite similar to sort of central France. You know, it's the same sort of plane in terms of the equator as central France. Completely landlocked though, so there's no winds or storms blowing in from the Atlantic like France has. We're talking Burgundy style weather. Now Burgundy as a region in France is famous for making great quality Pinot Noir. These guys have all of the same weather conditions, but probably on a more consistent level. Landlocked, therefore they don't get the inconsistent weather. That means they can predict how things are going to turn out each year, and that means great value for money.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we stock a lot of Romanian wines, and ultimately, like I said before, a lot of them are some of our best sellers. They are super great value and they're really high quality. This is like proper modern winemaking. It's not horse and cart, rustic, boutique. This is cutting edge stuff from Philip and the team at Cremel Racasse.
Yeah, absolutely. Philip Cox, Englishman, his wife Elvira, they founded it 10, 15 years ago now. I'll use track of the decades, to be honest.
It's more.
It's probably 20 years ago or so. But it is a state-of-the-art operation. They ship all over the world. They're relatively big as well. This isn't actually that small scale. Very state-of-the-art, very sustainable, but real expertise here. And actually, you know, I love their native stuff. It's really, really good. And if you want to explore Romanian native grape varieties, highly recommend it. They just do the international varieties with absolute flair. Occasionally with their Pinot Noir, they'll drop in a little bit of some of the natives. We're talking like it will be 90% Pinot Noir, and then they'll drop in 10% of something local just to give it a bit of oomph and a bit of guts. Occasionally they'll drop in a whiff of oak aging as well, but not too much. They just understand how to make really, really drinkable red wine.
Yeah, I mean, this is top rate. I drink the full spectrum of reds. I do enjoy the big face rippers, but I do really, really enjoy some of the light, easy drinkers, mainly because I can sink a couple of bottles. I drink this wine very, very often. And the other day, I was cooking some tea and decided to push the boat out. MasterChef started again, isn't it? So, you know, getting a bit ahead of myself.
All right.
Whipped up a mushroom sauce. It was bloody great with it.
You lost me when you said cook some tea.
Tea? You not say tea?
No.
Cook tea?
Tea?
Yeah, dinner. Well, no, dinner's lunch up here.
Oh, for God's sake.
We're north of the Watford Gap up here. That's your dinner is your lunch. Yeah. Cook the evening meal. let's lose any ambiguity. Evening meal. Whipped up a little mushroom sauce on the side because had a few mushrooms in the fridge. About to turn. This actually was bloody good with it.
Yeah, mushroom is a flavour that pops up a lot with Pinot Noir. So if you're drinking those posh Burgundies, they'll talk about those savoury mushroom flavours. And there's no doubt you could possibly get that from this type of wine. So yeah, anything mushroomy. It will even go well with creamy as well. There's malolactic fermentation, there's lees aging in this as well. That creates the creaminess, that we tend to associate with white wines, but it will be in this red as well. So yeah, mushroom sauce, lots of herbs, that sort of thing. Definitely a good pairing.
Right, I'll crack out the king oysters. Whip up the
Cheers.
sauce. Cool. Here we have the Altipiano Rosso. And now this is a Montepulciano wine.
Yep.
It says Rosso on the grape, and it's by the Fuedo Antico winery in mid to northern Italy.
Yeah, mid to northern, I guess.
Abruzzo.
Abruzzo, yeah, sort of central northern area, Abruzzo. It's most famous for Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. This is Montepulciano, but it's not named. I guess they probably change it on a yearly basis depending on what other grapes are growing well, so it might be a blend. But this year, for sure, it's 100% Montepulciano. Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, I think it's getting more and more popular. You see it more in the supermarkets and stuff, don't you?
I'm a big fan, and I could never find it anywhere. And then suddenly, I am seeing it more, seeing it lots in wine lists. I think I saw one in Aldi the other week. It is getting popular.
For sure, and it's a fantastic grape variety. Montepulciano, I guess you would say it's a red fruit grape variety. The fruit, it's sort of red fruit flavours. It's got a bit of spice to it as well, a bit of herbiness. It's got, lots going on. It's one of my favourites, actually, for cheese boards. If we're having one of those nights where we're not making dinner, maybe we've got a bit of charcuterie and a bit of cheese, we always have Montepulciano. But this is Fuedo Antico, as Dan said, the wine region. Fuedo, super sustainable and organic. In fact, they are the first and one of the smallest regions in Italy, winemakers, in Italy, to be Magis certified, which is like the highest level of certification for sustainability in Italy. There are various sustainability bodies, but Magis are the ones that really keep the bar high as to what, that will be to do with pesticides, it will be to do with how they farm the land, what impact it has on the wildlife and that sort of thing, as well as giving back to the communities around them. So really, really important. We've been working with them for a long time. We love their wines. And yet, still a small operation as well. Tiny little winery on the sort of scale of Italy, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was really interested to see this said, it was just a Rosso, because, Montepulciano is getting a bit more of a name. But there are quite a lot of Italian grapes, aren't there, that, they're just not particularly well known on their own, but we know in general Italy has a very good rep when it comes to winemaking. Something silly like 2,000 or 3,000 grapes just in Italy, right?
Yeah, about 3,000 Italian grape varieties, the names of which get insane. Italy as a country, if anyone knows anything about the history of Italy, it used to be super fragmented. So it's only been a united country for quite a short period of its history. It used to be into lots of little separate regions. That's why each region guards its food heritage really, really closely. If you go to speak to somebody in Campania about bolognese, then they'll tell you it's disgusting. But if you go to Bologna, it's the most important thing. Their food heritage is super important, but super regional. And it's the same with the wines. So there's 3,000 grape varieties. There are like 10 different names for the same grapes, depending on where you are, and how they treat them is completely different and mostly connected to the food. And so, it is a tightrope walk for sure. But I guess, one of the things that we talk about at Smash Grapes is coming back to climate. If you're unsure about the grape, you're unsure about the region, the best thing you can do is check out the weather. We're in central northern Italy here, so we're not talking big and jammy and full-bodied like, say, something from Campania or down south, not like a Primitiva or anything like that. But we're also not in the north, and the northern reds can surprise red wine drinkers because it's cold up there. We're talking Alps here, and they can be face rippers when it comes to tannins. This is central. This is the Merlot territory of red wine making in Italy. Nice all-rounder.
Middle Italy, middle red, but not like kind of middle meh. I bloody love Montepulciano.
Yeah.
I'm really getting into it, and it's because I for a long time have been kind of Pinot Noirs and your lighter reds, and I feel like this is. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still enjoy a face ripper. I think my problem is that I like something I can drink 2 or 3 bottles of, and this is. I'm working myself up to this. Montepulciano, is a cracking grape. What would I eat with this? Because I've got to eat if I'm going to have a couple of bottles. Got to eat. I mean, you said before, food in these regions is really important, and the winemaking follows it. Yeah,
for sure. And we're talking, anything sort of we're talking Sunday roast territory here. Yeah. Roasted meats for sure, but anything really herby, because there's a lot of herby flavors going on in here. It's not just about fruit. The mountainous territory, lots of herbs and shrubs and stuff. So roasted lamb, anything like that. Lots of rosemary, lots of thyme.
And there's like flavors. Really, really spiced and herby, like nut roasty, meaty.
Absolutely.
Feelings. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, look, I'll call you around on Sunday.
Cheers.
Here we've got the Costa Vera Carmenere from the Central Valley in Chile. So this is another Indomita wine, but this is the Costa Vera.
Absolutely, Indomita, fantastic Chilean wine producer who basically stock all of our Chilean wines. Super state of the art, really eco-conscious. They've got this community program where they only employ from the local community, which sounds simple, but is actually just super rare in the wine industry. You know, the wine industry tends to import labour from abroad at cheap, and some of the practices aren't great. Indomitor, fantastic. Their winery looks amazing. Like, it's built into the mountain. It looks like something off of a Bond film. Fantastic. This is their Carmenere. Carmenere, strange old grape that we've not really heard of a huge amount. In order to sort of explain Carmenere, I've got to give you a history lesson.
Oh, here we go. Come on then. Come on. Hit us with it.
So when the Spanish went over to the New World in the sort of the early 1500s, the first thing they packed, you know, quicker than we would pack our underpants, was grape varieties. They brought vines over. They were swiftly followed by the French, and they quickly realized that the Chilean landscape was perfect for wine growing, the soil, climate, and that sort of thing. Now, when you're a Frenchman bringing grapes over to the New World, what you're going to do, you're going to, of course, go to Bordeaux, the capital of wine growing. And those varieties at the time were Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and a little unknown variety called Carmenere. But Carmenere was a pain in the ass. A pain in the ass to grow. It was finicky. It didn't like changes in weather. It was really difficult, and it was falling out of fashion. So generally, what they did is they brought over the three favourites, Merlot, Cabernet, and Cabernet Franc. And in fact, even Cabernet Franc wasn't super popular, so it was very much Merlot and Cabernet, two grapes that we sort of associate with Chile now. Fast forward a few hundred years, we're talking 19th century, 20th century, and Chilean Merlot is booming. It's absolutely booming, and the Cabernet for sure, absolutely booming. The Chilean wine industry is growing at a rate of knots. The French have done their work. Chilean wine is fantastic, and particularly Chilean Merlot was given its own sort of title as Chilean Super Merlot because it was fruitier, it was spicier, it was more interesting than a standard French Merlot. Fast forward again to the 21st century, DNA testing comes in, we start testing our grape varieties for their history, and we find out Chilean Super Merlot, not Merlot at all, Carmenere. By that time, Carmenere had become extinct in France. We had Phylloxera in the 1800s, a little mite that came over from America, destroyed European grapevines and wiped off a lot of grape varieties. The Carmenere was non-existent in France, but had flourished in Chile and made the Super Merlot.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot going on to it. That's what I mean. I think that's why the Super Merlot came into it. It's got that kind of like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like I say, we're not one for pushing tasting notes on people, but there is like a bit of a green pepper, kind of bell pepper kind of vibe in it. Yeah, great wine.
So yeah, it's got all the fruit. It's got that plummy nature. It's got red fruit. It's got dark fruit, just like Merlot has, but almost in like a sort of a dialed up thing. But the thing that separates Carmenere from Merlot is that green nature, green bell pepper, a spiciness, a sort of, I think it's the flavour of fajitas. That's the flavour that I get from Carmenere. The flavour of fajitas, you know, that sort of peppery spiciness that comes through when you chop up all those peppers and stick them in your fajita mix.
Yeah, I mean, put it in a NutriBullet, whacking a glass of Merlot in it, probably not the right thing in your head. But yeah, I get what you're feeling. That's got that vibe to it. So you're saying fajita, so Mexican.
This
that
is
kind of vibe.
Carmenere. I mean, I love Carmenere. I actually think it's super easy drinking. That there's not too much tannin. You know, there's not too much grip on the gums. It's like Merlot in that fact that it is easy drinking. But for me, it's my go-to when I'm planning a bit of spice of the evening. So, you know, whether it be spag bowl, but I'm going to throw a bit more chili in than you perhaps would. Yeah. Whether it be fajitas, you know, anything like that, where you're adding a little bit of extra chili or pepper to your dinners. That's where I'm putting Carmenere.
I mean, and if you're thinking barbecue, kind of anything, like I say, anything with a bit of spicing on there, paprika, that kind of thing. Solid red for that occasion.
Absolutely, solid red. It's still an all-rounder as well. Let's not forget this is in the middle ground territory. We're not talking Shiraz or Cabernet or Malbec. It's not super heavy-bodied. It's in the middle territory. You pull this out at a party and, you know, pour it round and everyone's having a sip going, this is really great. They're going to be surprised to hear that it's Carmenere and not something middle of the road like a Merlot or a Tempranillo. It's a great all-rounder in that sense, from a fantastic winery when it comes to sustainability and practice, and great value for money.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, could be one of my new favourites. Cheers.
Cheers.
Right, here we have the Campo Flores Tinto. So this is an organic wine, Tempranillo Syrah, and this is from Castilla-La Mancha in central Spain.
That's right. Yeah, Castilla-La Mancha. So La Mancha is this big central region in the middle of Spain. It's quite high up. It's a plateau in the middle of the country, so it's got a bit of altitude, but super hot and super flat. I was browsing through the social media the other night, and obviously I get a lot of wine content, and there was a chap on there absolutely ripping La Mancha as sort of the dustbin of Spain winemaking, and it really annoyed me because, you know, this is a part of the Spanish winemaking world. Yeah, it's not famous, it's not Rioja, you know, and it's not Cava or anything like that, but it's where wine has been made for generations and generations. They've got no interest actually in selling it to a UK consumer market. They actually just make wine that's tasty and that can be enjoyed by friends and family at the dinner table. And you know, there's actually something a bit more noble about that than actually making wine to try and flog on the shelves. I quite like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Rioja there. You know, I was in the supermarket the other day just having a quick browse, and you know, the Spain, because they all set themselves out in countries. The Spain section is, you know, Rioja, and not a lot of people know Rioja itself is an area. Rioja's a tiny little area, small part of Spain that just, without going into the history, had a really strong link to exporting wine, which is why it became so popular. Tempranillo, main grape in this, that is Rioja, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So pretty much all Riojas are made from, firstly, Tempranillo. There will generally be a blend of Garnacha and Graziano as well, but those will be quite usually the minority grapes. It's mostly Tempranillo. In fact, you'll get 100% Tempranillo Riojas. And this is Tempranillo. Tempranillo is the red grape of Spain. You know, it pops up all over the country. Fantastic grape. In terms of like where you would place it, it's medium. It's medium bodied, but it's higher than something like a Merlot. So I wouldn't class it as medium Merlot. It's got a little bit more guts, a little bit more robustness, a bit more flavour than a Merlot. But yeah, it's a fantastic all-round grape variety. And it's vastly, vastly underrated. And unless it has the Rioja stamp on it, it tends to not get a look in. But, you know, Campo Flores, fantastic, sustainable, organic wine operation, producing Tempranillo. 20% Syrah in here, just to give it a little bit of a push. Great.
Yeah, and it's not oak aged, which is, you know, that's the thing, isn't it, with Rioja, how long it's spent in the oak barrel, and that makes it smooth and easy, and which is great if you want that style of wine. I mean, this is, it's quite a smooth red. I wouldn't say it's harsh, even though it's not had any oak aging. Organic winemaking, you know, is that just down to keeping the bugs away, or is there a bit more to it?
Yeah, so, you know, organic winemaking is becoming very, very important. You know, we're hearing from studies that, you know, us as consumers, we're looking for organic when we reach for a bottle of wine. It's actually, you know, simpler than you might think. So pesticides for sure, chemicals and fertilizers, we've got to be careful there. But, you know, your average La Mancha winemaker, you know, he will have already been fertilizing his grapes with the droppings of the sheep and the cattle that he also owns that were feeding on the weeds, you know, around the vineyard to get rid of those anyway. So he won't need chemical pesticides. You know, he'll already be operating, you know, in an area where indigenous wildlife is there, and therefore, you know, bugs and insects and birds are more inclined to go and eat the indigenous bush and berries than they are to eat his grapes. So organic comes pretty easy to these guys. We're talking about proper farmers who have probably been farming sheep or cattle or pigs or crops for a very, very long time, and then also have grapes on the side. Yep. And therefore, they've already got it down. They already understand it. Their grandfather's grandfather's grandfather had it down. And so organic comes naturally to them. And a lot of these guys in La Mancha in Spain, they don't actually bother paying for or jumping through the hoops to get a organic certification, because it can be expensive and difficult and it involves lots of paperwork. They just operate organic already. These guys do have the certification.
Yeah, I mean, and that's definitely a benefit of buying from someone like Smash Grapes, who, you know, understand and know their winemaker. Is it might not have, I mean, this one does have organic on the label, but if that's something you're after, we can tell you which winemakers are operating organically just because we know their setups.
Absolutely.
This, obviously, Tempranillo, bit of Syrah in there as well. You know, big foodie kind of market in Spain. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, if you're putting anything on a barbecue, this is a red to have with it.
For sure, yeah. The Tempranillo is going to go great with anything off the barbecue, but it's that Syrah. It's that 20% Syrah, spicy, smoky, peppery, just adds a little extra push to the red wine that takes it from sort of like easy drinking into a foodie wine. Barbecue would be perfect.
Great. Right, I'll light the coals now.
Cheers.
Here we have the Aloe Tree Shiraz. So this is a Shiraz from the Western Cape in South Africa. Big hitter, this. You talk about Aussie Shiraz quite a lot. South African Shiraz, 14.5.
Yeah,
Big lad.
Pretty heavy going, 14.5%. Yeah, it's generally the Australians only that do those big 14.5, even 15%. If you get into regions like Barossa in Australia for those types of Shirazes. South Africa, if you was asked me to generalise, I would say they do them on a lighter scale, but this one is a big hitter. Shiraz is a grape variety, or Syrah, as it's also known, is a Côte de Rhône red grape, so it comes from the Côte de Rhône in the south of France. And South Africa, as a winemaking region, has very much inherited a lot of French traits, and I guess that comes to something to do with colonialism and the French coming down. So they'll have a lot of Bordeaux varieties like Sauvignon and Chenin, and they'll also have a lot of Côte de Rhône varieties like Shiraz or Cinsault and those sorts of types. So yeah, comes down from the Côte de Rhône. It's a full-bodied grape variety. It loves the heat in South Africa. We're talking right down on the Western Cape where it's super hot, but you've got those Atlantic winds coming in to cool the grapes down, just to calm them slightly, but you can still make a beast.
I mean, yeah, it is big, it's bolshy, but it is smooth. There's oak you mentioned in here, I think. Oak aging, when it comes to a big red like this, kind of essential, right?
Absolutely. So when you're making a wine that's going to be 14.5%, that's had a lot of sunshine, developed a lot of robustness, and Shiraz can cope with that sunshine because of its thick skins. That's going to develop lots of tannin, that sort of grippy nature, that bitterness. You want to probably get a bit of oak in there to smooth it out, and that's what oak does for red wine. It smooths out the tannins. It takes away that grippy bitterness, makes them a little bit more smooth in nature, or even velvety. And if you take a really good example, Malbec is one of the most thick-skinned grape varieties out there, and so as a grape variety, it should be super tannic, but it's not, because what the Argentinians do, and we all love Argentinian Malbec, is they put it in a mixture of French and American oak, usually for lots and lots of months, to really make it velvety smooth. So that's an extreme example of how oak can turn a beast of a grape into something that's super silky. This only 3 months, so it's not taken a huge amount, but it really rounds it out and makes it easy drinking.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm just trying to think about food with this, because I think like something of this size, scale, body, you're probably going to eat with it. You've got to respect the pour if you're just drinking a 14.5 straight as it goes.
Yeah, I don't think you want to have 14.5% necessarily on its own. Yeah, it's going to get pretty heavy going, and there's still tannin there. The oak's done its job; it's smoothed it out, but then there is still tannin there. So you're going to need something to take the edge off of that. For me, Shiraz is synonymous with those sort of smoky, spicy, peppery flavors. If you're in a formal wine exam, which we all are, obviously, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
But if you're in a formal wine exam, one of the key sort of giveaways for Shiraz, if you're in a blind tasting, is pepper and spice. And so if you can smell that in the glass, or even barbecue flavors, then Shiraz is a firm guess. So anything around that sort of area, I think, is a good bet.
Right, well, I'll light the fires now. Let's get the smoke going.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching our drink along videos. We hope you enjoyed the wine. Don't forget to come back and spend your £10 voucher on your favourite.